and sewer for Westheria, Narcissus, and Iris. Mr. Manager.
We had a discussion at our work session last week of a method that we could use to make the improvements in that development of the 3 streets. And we proposed road and sewer improvements, and we talked about doing it as an abutment project, which would allow the property owners to pay some percentage of the cost of that development. We have presented that to the council of the 3 alternatives of 25%, 50%, and 75%, and with a 10-year payback. If you have been following your package, if the vote that needs to take place tonight, action, is that we really move forward with doing an abutment project, because there are several steps that we have to go through before we can actually do that. And the same thing with regard to how we actually go forward with charging whatever percentage we choose to charge. So you have to proceed to go through the process, authorize me to engage an engineer and get a preliminary engineering cost estimate. And then once that estimate is in, we have to have a public hearing. And following the public hearing, the council will determine whether or not to proceed. And then if proceeding, a contract with the engineer will be approved to develop plans and specs. And then we bid the project out. When bids are received, council will vote to approve or not. And then council votes to proceed with the project. Council will make the final determination as to the percentage to be charged to the property owners and the payback period. That's a very complicated and lengthy process. That is state law. That's what's required to do an abutment project by state law. So if you gentlemen are ready to make a decision, please do so, and we'll start the process if that's your choice.
Okay, I'm going to, before Mr. Sousa speaks, on second thought, Mr. Sousa, go ahead.
Thank you. How long does this process take? Just a guess.
Probably about 4 months.
That's pretty reasonable, considering the long way.
I think we could probably be close to bidding the project by the time winter breaks.
I think what we have here is an unusual situation, something that's been let go for way too many years. And because it's been let go for way too many years, although they have received fire and sewer, they've never even had lights out there, which is not really acceptable. And I think that due consideration ought to be taken into account for the long period of time that the city's failed to act on this. And I'm going to request the council to go in at 25%.
What do you mean, take the development schedule at 25%, Dave?
Yes.
I'll second that.
Well, are you making a motion, Mr. Sousa?
I will make the motion.
Okay, your motion is to proceed with the abutment process and authorize the city manager to engage an engineer to prepare a preliminary cost estimate. And then once the preliminary cost estimate has been received, the public hearing will be held with all the property owners being notified by certified mail. Then after the public hearing, the council will determine whether or not to proceed with the project. And if proceeding, a contract with an engineer will be approved to develop the plans and specification and bid the project. And then when the bids are received, the council will vote to approve or not to approve the bid. If the city determines it could perform the work for less cost, the city council can reject the bid and have the work performed by city crews. If the bids come in more than 10% of the original estimate, an additional public hearing with all property owners notified will be held to determine whether or not to proceed. If the council votes to proceed with the project, council will make the final determination as to the percentage to be charged to the property owners and the payback period. Now, what you're saying, you want to put in the 25% before we even know what the cost is going to be.
That's correct.
Tax assessments and notice of lien will be made once the project is complete and all costs are known. And you have a second to that motion. Is is that correct?
Well, I just thought we was going with this
I know,
25%.
I know, but that, we've got to do a lot
Yeah.
more than that. In other words,
I understand.
there's a lot more to it, Mr. Curley, than the percentage. And one of the questions that I have is, are we going to, it says right here, state law allows the city to proceed through an abutment project at either the city's initiative or through the initiative of at least 51% of the property owners. Are you saying that you are not going to require the property owners to have a voice in this?
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's waited long enough, it's time to move forward with it. That's my opinion. 50 years is long enough to wait for having a gravel road existing inside the city limits of Crossville.
Well, I think we need to have a public hearing.
I agree with that.
To be very honest with you, sir, I think there's 60, how many property owners are there? 59 or 60?
Somewhere along
I
there.
think
There
there's-
will be a public hearing once we get that estimate if this motion passes or if the motion passes. And they'll be notified by certified mail, all property owners.
Well, I just believe that we ought to let them know what we're thinking about doing, and before a lien is filed on their property without them knowing what the costs are going to be. I feel like they need to have a little bit more information, and I agree with you, Mr. Sousa, that I would be in favor of less than, I think that there was a 25%, 50%, and 75% with a 10-year payback. Usually we do 75% in 5 years, isn't it, Mr. Rutherford? Except I believe we did one in a very isolated event, but it has been going on too long. I'd like to see the project done, but personally, I feel like that I think people ought to be given the opportunity to see what the project is and have a public hearing, and I guess I would want to split it 50-50.
I would have been just as satisfied to put 2 lights up there and take $60,000 out of the budget and pay Westheria and deal with that. I would have been satisfied with that. But it was my impression that the council wanted to go for an abutment. So my feeling is that this needs to move on, and we need to take action and get that area back where it has basic services, all the basic services.
Well, I want to vote for the abutment process and myself, but I'd like to know what the cost estimate has, and that the notice of public hearing is gone for Mr. Sousa, to be very honest with you.
I'll waiver my motion on the 25% and the total amount and address that later.
That's great. That's great. So, Mr. Curley, would you second what he's just?
Yeah, I'll retract my second. I'll remove my second.
Very well. Would you second the motion that he's made that would remove, just go ahead with the abutment project and remove the percentage so after we have a public hearing?
Yes.
Very well. Thank you very much. Further comments, questions, or concerns? There being none, roll call vote.
Councilman Susan?
Aye.
Councilman Wyatt?
I'd like to ask the city manager a question before I vote. Do you think that it's possible that there's street light, that there's light poles in that area since they've been paying property tax? If we put up 3 or 4 lights over there, it wouldn't have anything to do with the abutment process. Do you think that's a possibility while we're getting to this 4-month interval and getting this process?
We can put up lights, and that's not being calculated in the
Right,
abutment process.
right. I'd like to see that happen, and I vote aye.
Councilman Marlowe?
Aye.
Councilman Curley?
Aye.
Mayor Green?
I'm gonna vote aye with the stipulation that Mr. White made, that we go over there and if we can put up some streetlights, we do so as soon as possible. I vote aye. Item number, where are we, or anybody? Okay, item number F. We'll learn how to mark these off one of these days. Discussion and action on the operation of the Crossville Depot